Hello, and welcome to New Videocast. I'm Layla Swan, and I lead communications at New. Our guest today is Ethan Eisman, our Chief Design Officer. Ethan has built a career in some of the world's most design forward companies, like Airbnb, Slack, Uber, Google, and Adobe. Ethan, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
That's great. We're happy to have you. I want to start a little bit off topic. So, you are joining us from Slack, and
That's right.
Slack is a super popular enterprise messaging tool that many companies use. And we are Slack obsessed. We do everything on Slack, we thrive on Slack, we're so quick on
I
Slack.
know I'm in it already.
I wanted to get your impressions about, do you see this often? And what are your experiences watching us
Yeah.
use Slack?
Yeah, great question. So I try to be an anthropologist as a designer, and it's fascinating to watch the way that different people and different companies use software. So as somebody who led the design of Slack for over 6 years, seeing it being used in a whole new context is super fascinating. Because obviously the way that we use Slack at Slack is different than the way that Nubank uses Slack. And it's just kind of interesting to see I guess what I would describe as like my child out in the world interacting with other people. And there's some things that I see Nubank doing that are actually really, really good in terms of their use of Slack. So yeah, it's been really fun to sort of learn how Nubank uses Slack and also see actually where Slack has some room to improve. And I'll give that feedback to the team. And these are areas that we've been focusing on. But one of the really cool things that I've appreciated is coming into Nubank. Slack has this really great AI search feature, and I can search for all of these new financial terms like clip, and I get answers. So, Slack team, if you're listening, launch more AI features. They're very beneficial for me now, especially.
Absolutely. I agree with that. So, Ethan, you are our inaugural Chief Design Officer. We haven't had that position before. And of course, design has always been very important to us. But what should we expect from your arrival in terms of, impacting operations and customers?
Yeah. So, first of all, the reason why I joined Nubank is threefold. First, the opportunity to make people's financial lives less complex and empower people across Latin America and Brazil and Colombia and Mexico is the opportunity of a lifetime. And that that mission of simplicity is really core to what I do in my design practice, which is try to simplify the experience that people have. So the opportunity to be able to do that with people's financial data, which is in their financial lives, which your finances can either be a source of joy or a source of real challenge, or a source of optimism or a source of pessimism. And to be able to empower people to engage in the financial process is just such an incredible opportunity. So that's the mission. Second is the impact that we have on people's lives. I have been at Nubank now for around 4 weeks, and I've seen how much our customers love us. And that love comes from the fact that Nubankers love our customers fanatically. And then the result is the impact that we've had in the customer base, which is very profound. And then the last is our ambition. And as a design leader, I'm interested in making change in the world. Nubank is such an interesting and innovative company, and the opportunity that we have to innovate within the world of financial services, which are oftentimes moving at such a slow rate of change, but innovate in a way that's responsible, is such an ambitious, sort of an ambitious agenda. And I'm just super excited to be a part of that. So when you ask, what can I bring to Nubank? Those are the reasons why I joined. But what I can bring to Nubank is, I think, a fresh perspective on what it means for design to lead within an organization. Design isn't just the pictures that we paint. It's not just the visuals that we design. Design goes deep into the way that the business runs. And then frankly, I am obsessed with the craft of the experience. And so when I look at the opportunity that we have within financial services, if you look at most of the experiences that people have in a digital world of financial service, it's pretty bland. And we talked a bit about bringing joy and optimism to people's financial lives. I'm driven by delivering a powerful, emotional, positive experience into the way that people use technology. And Nubank has such a broad reach of customers, and the ability to bring that passion that I have for craft and delight and emotional resonance in an appropriate way into a financial product I think is going to help Nubank move into, its next phase.
And Ethan, can you tell us more if it makes a real difference for the chief design officer to be at the C level in a company instead of sometimes we see them under product or under marketing?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of experience in different types of organizations where design has had different seats at different tables, and every organization is unique. One that I learned a significant amount of design playing a leadership role within the organization was Airbnb. Obviously Brian is a designer and a founder himself, and he really prioritizes the design team and the design way of thinking and ethos within the overarching product development process, but also in the way of thinking about the organization itself. And coming to Nubank and working with David, what I saw here was a real commitment to ensuring that design was not only up-leveling the experience of the product, but also, was brought in to have a focus on how we think better about our product and the direction of our product and the value that we are providing to customers, and also how design can change the organization from within. How do we actually bake design into the product development process so that it doesn't come at the end of the cycle or as an afterthought or as just seen as, painting the pixels, but it's a critical part of the discovery of customer needs, of understanding the overarching market and the overarching competitive landscape, understanding the breadth of different regulations that we have in each country, understanding where the opportunities lie within that matrix of challenges, and then being able to apply this deep level of customer insight to the problems, and then translate that into an experience that is not only useful and usable, but incredibly enjoyable. That's really the glue that design can provide across the organization. I think in my role specifically, the other thing that I've experienced that can be beneficial, and I think I'm bringing that benefit to Nubank, is this process that designers often have where they think in non-linear and more of a systems-oriented perspective about the problem space. If you think about a way that somebody who works in finances they think about step by step by step by step by step to get to the final equation. When you're dealing with design problems, you're oftentimes taking a set of very messy variables and putting together this constellation of facts and inputs and observations, and then synthesizing them into an insight that helps shine a path forward that doesn't come from a linear process. So I oftentimes will bring that to organizations, and I'm already starting to feel that at Nubank as I've learned about the different financial landscape and opportunities in Brazil, and comparing that to Colombia and Mexico, which are obviously very different countries with very different financial and purchasing behaviors. But there's also interesting little commonalities that I'm starting to see across the board.
Yeah, no, I find that fascinating because I think we don't have a shortage of, consumer problems to solve,
Right.
and challenges ahead of us.
Yeah.
But as you were speaking, I kept thinking about also, isn't that the window maybe for true innovation to keep on happening? We
Right.
were very disruptive, but we don't end here.
Yeah.
We've got a future ahead.
Yeah, the innovation process oftentimes isn't linear. It's one. There are innovation processes that you can follow, but most innovation processes occur when you have multiple minds working together. And again, it's that synthesis of different perspectives that generates this new idea or this new spark. I guess you could say I've got maybe multiple minds working together in my mind that that can oftentimes come up with some nice integrated ideas, but that's kind of the core of an innovation practice as well.
We'll put them all to work,
Yeah.
all the minds.
That's great. All of my multiple agents in my head.
So you gave me a great segue because my next question is, what's the next frontier for design disruption?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's agents yet for design, but it's definitely the impact that AI is having in the way that we do design, and oftentimes specifically in the tool set that we use to do design. So at a very fundamental level, if you look at the design process, it is a process of failure. And it's a process of rapid failure. So for example, if you are trying to create an interface, you're oftentimes going through a process of aligning certain rectangles or circles to generate essentially a layout, and that layout's got a set of meaning. but there's all these little like micro adjustments, and each one of those micro adjustments are like little bitty failures. And so when you add it all up, all those clicks that you take, they are all like little bitty failures along the path towards ultimately something that is a successful outcome. It's the goal that's in your mind, and you're finally able to express it through the use of a tool and like tens of thousands of interactions with the computer. And what's fascinating about what generative AI specifically has done is that within a incredibly short set of commands, you're able to express an intention, and the output is it's the goal. It's just done. My perspective is that for designers who are curious, all of these generative tools are going to create an abundance of opportunities. We'll be able to do more and better. And the reason is that what designers possess that many other people or functions within the software group don't possess is an understanding of craft and style and then good taste. And those are all really three hard things to do. When I vibe code right now, I get this output, which is essentially an interface that's created with generic Tailwind CSS, not styled. I know it's going to look like every single other app that I've output when I vibe code. So the differentiation, I think, in the future, when everything kind of looks and feels the same, every kind of software product that you might build looks and feels the same. The difference will be the level of craft, the aspect of the experience that is styled in a tasteful way. And as we move into an era where there is more AI-oriented generation of content, ultimately it's the tastemakers, the people who have real craft skills, who have a sense of style. Those are the ones that are going to continue creating great things.
We've been talking a little bit about the tools, that we can use AI as a tool for, the work to improve. But how about AI like changing the world in a way where design becomes something different? Like product design might change it to something else because the
Yeah.
world has changed. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah. No, I think there's the impact on the way that product design changes. There's just so many different types of interfaces that will exist in the future.
We're going to consume in a different
We're
way.
going to consume in an entirely different way. We see a lot of consumption via chat or via voice, and that'll create entirely new modalities of software production and consumption. But one thing I think is really interesting is when we think about how the different functions who build software work. And obviously you've got design and you've got product and you've got engineering, but you also have data science and you have FP&A and you have legal, etc. So what I think is fascinating is the overlap between these functions, right? And so, what does that mean to empower each of these functions to do things that they otherwise couldn't, and maybe do things that their peers who are in different functions can? And how do we blend our capabilities?
I feel like you might be describing like the career of the future where people are multi enterprise specialists.
Absolutely. The best advice that I've heard about the future of how to thrive in a world of infinitely available information and analysis and perspective and insight, and then generative tooling, is having a sense of interest and curiosity, and most of all, having a sense of agency. Like, do it. Actually have an idea and do it, because the distance between your idea and then gaining an understanding of how to do that idea has been dramatically shortened by deep research. And then the distance from like, okay, this is how I actually do that idea, and then this is how I execute on what I just learned, is dramatically shortened by having some AI agents and the tool set that we can use to build.
I think that's the next question I wanted to ask you is, have you been able already to assess, what are the priorities? What are the main challenges that you're going to be facing? Like what are you up to for the next few months?
So I've got three main priorities. The first one is to help elevate the experience of Nubank's app to the best level it can possibly be. And so when I think about what the best level it can possibly be is, it is the best experience in all of finance. So that's the goal, and we've got a ways to go. But that is, where we're setting our heights. Again, we have over, 115, 120 million customers. We have a lot of customers who are using our experience or our app. And again, we have the opportunity to just utterly either delight them in certain situations, bring them a level of optimism in other situations, or just make sure the experience is rock solid and super performant, no matter on what device, no matter where you are in Brazil or Colombia or Mexico. Like it should just work incredibly well. So that's the number one goal. Number two goal is to work with the whole design organization to help elevate and uplift the design organization in Nubank. There's some incredible designers who are doing incredible work, and we've got a great team, and there's a real opportunity for them to play more of a leadership role in helping define our product, move our product forward, and then create those incredible experiences that I'm expecting us to build. And the last area that I'm focused on is helping Nubank as an organization change. So we have an incredible growth trajectory. We are very well positioned to move forward into the future. We just have a really interesting opportunity ahead of us. But I think what got us here isn't necessarily going to get us there. And so there's some new ways that we can work. And Nubank has been, very successful in the way that it works. And I'm just so impressed by the culture and the drive of the folks of the company. But as we embrace these new innovations and these new opportunities, there's some experiences that I have that I think will help us, move forward faster into the future.
You mentioned we have a really strong design team. Can you tell us a little bit more about how to further develop them, build an even stronger design team? Like, what does it take?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about design having a seat at the table. And there's another part of having a seat at the table, which is once you're at the table, you need to be able to speak the language too. So, when I look at what it takes to make a good designer and then what it takes to make a great designer, they are two sort of different things. So a good designer is one who is a part of every step of the product development process. They're able to synthesize the insights they see from customers and from the business and from the competitive landscape. They're able to define concepts, lead their team in the concept definition process. They're able to collaborate well with their engineering and product teams to get the product to the right spot. And they're able to up-level the craft so that what we ship is well crafted. It's not just useful and usable, but it's well crafted. So that's a good designer. Now, a great designer does all of that, but at every step of the way, they elevate the expectation of the team. They might take that feature from one that is merely a vitamin. So it meets a need that somebody has, but it doesn't exceed that person's expectations. And it takes it to a painkiller where you look at the solution and it's either so easy to use that that's a painkiller, or it's like it's so effective and it meets such a deep need that it's a painkiller. But they're able to elevate that feature to the next level. And it when you've seen it. Right. Everybody in the team can then point at it and say, that is actually really good. I think we should do that.
It's a breakthrough.
It's a breakthrough. Exactly. It's like a breakthrough. And then at the end of the process, they're elevating the expectations of craft for the team. So they hold themselves accountable, not just to designing something that's elevated, but in working with their engineering team to make sure that it's executed, or working with their product team to make sure that there's time enough in the schedule to execute it. And then sometimes they actually learn how to code so they can execute that thing, that craft on their own. But they're not taking no for an answer, and they're collaborating along the way so that their team really loves working with them, and the output is something that's actually extremely elevated.
So you're talking a little bit about elevating the quality bar continuously throughout the entire process.
That's right. Yeah.
It reminds me of a Jeff Bezos quote that even when customers don't know it, they always want something better.
Yeah.
How does design play into that?
Yeah, well, I mean that quote is about the opportunity for innovation, full stop. I think the other part of the quote is like they are something like wonderfully dissatisfied. When I think about just the development of technology and products throughout the ages, that quote is so true, and it's just the nature of technology that it's consistently and constantly moving forward. Okay, so. I oftentimes think in terms of what I call the utility curve, and this is something that we talked a lot about at Slack. So if you think about it, 4.5 years ago, when people expected software to be intelligent, there was a very low expectation for intelligence. So if you created intelligence in software, you put a lot of time and effort into that in that piece of software, and you basically, on this utility curve, you got only a bit more utility for more effort you put into it. But once you actually hit a certain level of effort you put in, you've got on the steep part of the utility curve. And then you start to crest the curve. And when you get to the top, then any more effort you put into it, you're going to get a marginal return on utility. So 4.5 years ago, anything that you could do that had some kind of intelligence in it would immediately hit that steep part of the utility curve. That same feature now, after AI, is so far behind what people expect in that utility curve of intelligence, it's not even on a map anymore. So the utility curve is always moving forward. So what that means is that if you have a product, you have to constantly assess where you're at in the utility curve with the feature you build or your product, and then did the curve actually move forward, right? So I think that's super
The
fascinating.
goalpost is changing.
The goalpost is changing. So like, should we have AI mediated personal finance by this point? Should I be able to talk to my personal private banker? I think that we are in an incredible position at Nubank to be able to unlock that kind of benefit. But again, it's this interesting, like, if we were to do that and do that well, the utility curve for banking would be pushed so far forward in the future. So anyway, that's kind of a way that I think of the progression of technology.
And it ties back to what we were saying earlier about the pivotal moment, right?
Yeah.
So we are disruptors, but I think we are getting ready for disrupting again and again and
Yeah.
again, because this is a never-ending game, right?
That's right. That's
Mhm.
absolutely true.
And speaking of that being a never-ending game, I think there's like the competitive landscape to look around. I think one of the things we take great pride of here at Nubank is that we helped the entire industry evolve a lot, and that's ultimately good for everyone. So it's like net positive for everyone. So what are you seeing in the financial industry right now? Like people are stepping up their games. How are we faring against?
Yeah. So first of all, competition is so wonderful for innovation, for promoting drive, for just making things better for all consumers, right? And Nubank is in an awesome position to consistently deliver a better level of experience and quality for all of our services, whether it's our customer support, whether it's our brand, whether it's our, the delivery of love to our customers via our products. We are in such an amazing position. And we have an obligation to do that. Like, we're in this great position, but that doesn't mean that we can rest. We can never rest because our customers are never satisfied. But I think even more important than that, if you're driven by a fanatical love for your customers, you are never resting. Like, what you do, regardless of what the competition does, is never good enough because your own standards are elevating, because you see your own additional ideas to exceed customers' expectations. I mean, go beyond that, like, create an experience that drives fanatical customer love, right? And that is one of our goals at Nubank. And so, I think competition just fuels that fire. And if you look across almost every massively powerful evolution in technology that has resulted in competition, the end result has been just fantastic for consumers. Like, I think about the old days of like mobile touch-based computing. Android came out before iOS, but the original experiences on Android were not very good at all. Then Apple dropped the iPhone, and immediately the world changed. And lo and behold, very soon after, Google delivered really exceptional Android experiences. So that's the way, tools get better. That's the way technology improves. Competition is a core part of driving, capitalism, which is a great environment in which to deliver outstanding outcomes to humanity. And so Nubank, as a company, being driven by technology and being driven by its, fanatical love for customers, is in this prime spot to, use competition as a little bit of a tailwind to help us push us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And this brings us kind of full circle. We're talking again about customer obsession. And I was thinking about something you said earlier. You talk a lot about delight in the design process, but you use some new words too. You talked about optimism and joy. Can you tell us where you're coming from?
Well, frankly, when you think about financial information and a person's financial information, it tells a story of their life. And ideally, we would be able to understand all of your financial data so that we can help predict how to give you a better financial outcome. And for me, that's where the optimism comes in. If we can apply AI to the great data that we have in a way that is so focused on positive customer outcomes, those insights, I think, can really power a level of optimism in people's financial lives. And I see optimism in Nubank. I see optimism in the perspective of loving our customers fanatically and trying to drive a level of fanatic customer love. Like that is about optimism and it's about joy. And I think ultimately, so that's the data perspective, but ultimately, if we're putting time and energy into work in our lives, we do have an opportunity to think about injecting the work that we do with a level of like love and care. I recently saw a interview of Jonathan Ive with Patrick Collison, where he was talking about the work that he did on the packaging for a cord on like a Sunday afternoon when he should have been playing with his kids. And his perspective on that was, I'm doing this thing on a Sunday afternoon when I should be out playing with my kids because I care. And there will be so many people who receive this object that I put my time and energy and effort and love into, who will receive that object. And when they receive it, they may not immediately perceive it, but they will know that the person who made this actually cared about me. And that's, like when I saw that quote, I was like, that's extraordinarily moving. It's very powerful. And I feel the same way about the software that we build for folks. And so, I think if we at Nubank can put the time and energy and care and love and commitment into our work, what's going to come out to our customers is something that does feel optimistic and joyful, because every interaction will feel like it was crafted by somebody who deeply cares about them. That person who's, maybe worried about being able to, pay the bills at the end of the month. They open up the Nubank app, and there's something about the experience that gives them a feeling of optimism, that it will be okay. And it's about the data that we've provided. It's about the level of credit that we've provided. It's about the technology that drives the system. It's about the quality of the experience that leaves them with a feeling of optimism for the next day.
Well, Ethan, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us.
Absolutely.
And thank you to our listeners for staying till the end.